What happens when a well-known gospel singer takes a bold step that shakes the entire church world? You won't believe what unfolded when Leandria Johnson, one of the biggest voices in gospel music, publicly supported serious allegations against T.D. Jake, a powerful and respected church leader. Let me tell you, this is how a controversy erupted that no one saw coming, and it sent shockwaves through the faith community everywhere. Leandria Johnson didn't just quietly agree with the claims. She went public, standing by Juanita Benham, who accused T.D. Jake of manipulative and harmful behavior. But here is the shocking part. Leandria's support wasn't just a simple opinion. She used her social media platform to boldly declare that sometimes standing up for the truth means going against the grain, even when it's uncomfortable. This was not just about one church leader. This was a challenge to the whole system that many thought was untouchable. For years, T.D. Jake had been seen as a pillar of faith and hope, leading one of the biggest megachurches in the world. His name was almost sacred among millions of followers. But Juanita Benham's accusations changed everything. She spoke out publicly about emotional abuse and attempts to damage her reputation, things no one expected to hear about such a respected figure. This wasn't a quiet disagreement or a small scandal. This was a loud and very public conflict that raised questions nobody dared to ask before. The gospel world has always had its share of controversies, but what made this different was Leandria Johnson's involvement. Known for her powerful voice and honest stories about her own struggles, she was never afraid to speak her truth. Yet, supporting such serious claims against someone like TD, Jake put her career and reputation at great risk. Destiny took an unexpected turn when she decided to speak out, knowing well that this could cost her dearly. As soon as Leandria showed her support, the gospel community split. Many praised her courage, seeing her as a voice for those who had been silenced and hurt by powerful leaders. Others called her reckless, accusing her of betraying the church and stirring division. But Leandria stood firm, refusing to back down despite the growing backlash. This is where it gets interesting. The controversy wasn't just about two people clashing. It was about an entire system being questioned for the first time in a very long time. The gospel world was watching closely as this drama unfolded. People started to wonder if the church would continue to protect its powerful figures or finally face the hard truths that had been hidden for years. Leandria's decision had opened a door that many feared to open, and once it was open, there was no going back. The craziest part, this was only the beginning of a much larger story that would soon involve even more voices and reveal secrets no one expected. After Leandria Johnson took that brave stand, the tension in the gospel community grew thicker every day. People who had once admired T.D. Jake found themselves confused, torn between loyalty and doubt. The church walls that once seemed unshakable now felt fragile. Meanwhile, Leandria's life started changing in ways she never imagined. She received messages from supporters who thanked her for speaking out, but also faced harsh criticism, threats, and even attempts to silence her. It felt like she was caught in a storm, but she refused to be quiet. As the days passed, more stories began to emerge from others who claimed they had faced similar mistreatment behind the scenes. These voices, quiet for so long, suddenly found courage in Leandria's example. It was as if a dam had broken, and the flood of hidden truths couldn't be stopped. People who once feared speaking out now felt empowered to share their pain. This created an intense battle between truth and denial, love and loyalty, faith and fear. T.D. Jake and his supporters responded with strong denials and warnings about the dangers of gossip and false accusations. They warned the community not to rush to judgment and reminded everyone of the spiritual harm that could come from division. Some leaders tried to calm the storm by calling for prayer and unity, but beneath those words was a growing unease. The trust that once connected leaders and followers was cracking, and the church faced a moment of reckoning. Leandrea didn't just face external pressure. Inside her, she struggled too. She questioned whether she was doing the right thing or if she had made a mistake by stepping into such a painful conflict. The pressure was immense, but her faith gave her strength. She knew that sometimes standing for truth meant walking through fire. Every time she thought of giving up, she remembered the faces of those who had been hurt and silenced for too long. Then came an unexpected twist. A well-respected journalist reached out to Leandrea, wanting to investigate the story more deeply. This was huge because now the story was no longer just a private conflict within the church. It was becoming a public conversation. The gospel world suddenly found itself under a spotlight it hadn't prepared for. Leandrea realized that what started as a personal stand had grown into something much bigger. The question now wasn't just about one man or one church, but about how power and truth lived together in the community. The controversy was far from over. It was evolving, with new players stepping in, new voices rising, and secrets threatening to unravel everything. And through it all, Leandrea remained in the middle of the storm, a symbol of courage and a reminder that sometimes the hardest path is the one that leads to real change. As the story gained more attention, the church community became even more divided. Some people stood firmly behind T.D. Jakes, believing his innocence and hoping the accusations would just fade away. Others sided with Leandrea and those who came forward, convinced that the truth needed to be faced no matter how painful. The debates grew louder, not just in church meetings, but also on social media, where the conversation was raw and unfiltered. Families and friends found themselves arguing over their beliefs, some relationships cracking under the weight of the controversy. Meanwhile, Leandrea continued to share her experiences openly, refusing to back down. She attended interviews and spoke at gatherings, her voice steady but filled with emotion. Each time she spoke, more people came forward with their stories, painting a picture that was difficult to ignore. The journalist who had reached out dug deeper, uncovering details that suggested the problem was not just about one individual, but about a culture that allowed silence to protect the powerful. It was becoming clear that this was a story about trust, abuse of authority, and the cost of speaking out. The tension inside the church leadership grew as well. Some leaders tried to handle the situation quietly, fearing the damage it could do to their reputation and the church's influence. Others pushed for transparency and change, seeing this as a moment to rebuild and heal. Meetings behind closed doors were filled with anger, fear, and sometimes even threats. The church, once seen as a place of peace, now felt like a battlefield where loyalty was tested and hidden truths threatened to destroy everything. At the same time, Leandrea faced personal struggles. The pressure to stay strong weighed heavily on her. She dealt with loneliness, fear for her safety, and moments of doubt. But what kept her going was the growing support from strangers who saw her courage and from those who had suffered in silence for years. She began organizing groups to help victims of abuse within religious communities, creating a safe space where people could find hope and healing. Just when it seemed the story might finally reach a breaking point, another shocking revelation came to light. Evidence surfaced that suggested some church officials had tried to cover up the accusations or discourage victims from speaking out. This discovery caused a new wave of outrage and called into question the integrity of those in power. The community's faith was shaken, but it also sparked a stronger demand for justice and real change. Through all this chaos, Leandrea remained determined. She knew the road ahead would be difficult, but she believed that truth had the power to bring healing, even if it meant breaking old walls and facing painful realities. Her journey was far from over, and the story was just beginning to unfold in ways no one expected. As the pressure mounted, the church finally agreed to hold a public meeting to address the accusations and the growing unrest. The room was packed with people, some seeking answers, others demanding accountability, and many just hoping for peace. Leandrea stood among them, feeling the weight of the moment, but also a quiet strength inside her. When it was her turn to speak, her voice was clear as she shared not only her story, but the stories of others who had been silenced for so long. Her words echoed through the room, stirring emotions and forcing everyone to confront the truth they had tried to ignore. In the days that followed, investigations were launched and the church's leadership faced intense scrutiny. Some officials resigned or were removed, unable to escape the consequences of their actions or inactions. The church began to slowly change, policies were updated, support systems for victims were put in place, and conversations about abuse and power became more open. It was a painful process, but many saw it as a necessary step toward healing and rebuilding trust. Leandrea's courage inspired others beyond her community. Her story spread far and wide, encouraging victims everywhere to speak up and demand justice. She kept working to create safe spaces and resources, determined that no one should have to suffer in silence again. Though the scars remained, hope began to grow in the hearts of many. Yet, even with progress, the journey was not easy. Leandrea still faced moments of doubt and fear, and not everyone accepted the changes. But she held on to the belief that truth and courage could break the cycle of abuse, and that healing was possible when people stood together. In the end, the story became more than just about one person or one church. It became a powerful reminder that silence protects the wrongdoer, but speaking out brings light to darkness. And while the road was long and winding, the courage to face the truth had sparked a new beginning, one filled with hope, strength, and the promise of real change.